Hi everyone, so tonight we're going to talk about creative projects. I know it's something that a lot of photographers do to build up their portfolio, and maybe you've already done some or you're thinking about doing some, and I think I want to talk a little bit about how that can be managed a little better and approached from a different way that's maybe holding you back right now. So first of all, why are creative projects important? So photographers build their portfolios, yes, with client work. Client work is usually pretty specific, and it might be you get a client that they're shooting exactly what you want to shoot and put in your portfolio. And that's the case in my experience when you're starting off, at least maybe like 20 to 30% of the time. So what creative projects help you with is to bolster those areas of your portfolio that you want to be in instead. Say you want to be in sports photography and you don't have any sports clients right now. You have to do some creative projects to kind of show people what you want to accomplish, what your style is, what the final product's going to look like, because a lot of people won't buy based on a guess or like a hypothetical, like I'm a really good sports photographer, if you don't have any sports photography. So when I say creative projects, don't think so much kind of traditional fine arts. Think of it as a business growth opportunity, although some of them do end up being a little more on the kind of like artsy side of things, which two of them I'm going to show you tonight. So the first one here actually came out of an opportunity. I woke up one morning and Vancouver had one of those temperature inversions, so that results in the whole city being covered by fog until about 11 a.m. I was also going on a big walk across Scotland in a couple weeks, and I hadn't really been like a long distance walker. It sounds like such a geriatric thing to say. But I wanted to test out like my new shoes, see what it was like to walk for an extended period of time, because everywhere in my neighborhood I can get there in about 20 or 30 minutes. So to go on like a 5 or 6 hour walk with camera gear would be a good test of like, am I going to survive this Scotland thing? So the route I took was basically around the entire waterfront of Vancouver. Google says 5 hours and 32 minutes. So yeah, it probably took me at least that long, if not longer. It didn't take too many breaks, but it was an interesting way to see the city. I wanted to be close to the water because then there's some great fall off, and I'm going to share some images which I took as a part of that project. One thing I really liked about this project is how the environment forced everything to look the same. I think the difficulty with creative projects, whether you're doing them as a one-shot on a specific day or a multi-day project or multi-year project, is having them look with like they have a matching aesthetic. So with this, as I was walking through all the kind of grain piers and Port of Vancouver, even the sports fields, because we're dealing with this fog and environmental element in all of them, they tend to tie together quite easily. These aren't heavily post-productioned at all. I just kind of took them straight out of camera, and it was a neat way to see the city because you don't often see Vancouver looking like this, which is why I am still really happy with the work that was created as a result of this. Yeah. And out of these creative projects, like not everyone is going to be my favorite. I think of the series, this is probably my favorite one, just because it is that kind of weird aesthetic. Everybody kind of takes those street photographs of downtown Vancouver, Granville Island, things like that, and we've all seen them over and over again, but I don't think there's any photo like this that I've seen of this pier right by the Second Narrows Bridge and of this ship encased in fog like this. I'm quite proud of this. And it just gives this kind of very different look and feel to all these environments that we're so used to seeing on a day-to-day basis. I feel like it quiets down what you're looking at a lot because you can't see the background all the way out there. You'd be looking towards Mount Baker from this perspective, which is, miles and miles and miles away. But we're really kind of crushed into the foreground and midground here, which I kind of like the feel of. It's a very cozy kind of looking photo to me. Yeah, so that's the whole walk and everything I decided to post. I mean, not everything on that whole walk was usable by the end of it, so I didn't know what I was going to get leaving the door, but the opportunity came up, I had the time available, and I tied these all together, and some of these images still live on my website to this day, because I think it's an interesting talking point about a different perspective to give a pretty standard looking like these grain piers. We probably, if you live on the North Shore, you've driven by these every day. I think these are grain piers. Anything that's a silo, I'm like, that's a grain pier. And anybody that works in the Port of Vancouver industry is probably like, that's not correct. But it gives a different perspective. And talking with clients about like, do you want it to look like people walking by this every day? Do you want this to look a little bit unique? Can we do to change that? Obviously, you can't call in the weather, but it brings into question, like, do we want to shoot this during a time where the weather is going to be like sunny, rainy, overcast, all those different elements? So while I'm not trying to sell this to a client as a specific look, like if I wanted to get in sports and action photography, I think it shows a wider range of creativity and what's possible with photography, so I can at least prompt the conversation with clients to see if they'd potentially be interested in doing something a little outside of their comfort spectrum, if I can pitch that effectively. So a more recent project that is actually still ongoing for me is proof I went outside today. So as the pandemic went on and on and on, I got very comfortable getting everything to come to me, like groceries, food, friends online through Zoom and video games and things like that. So I was just not going outside very much at all. And I think it was one span of time, it was like 2 or 3 weeks I hadn't left the house because there really wasn't a reason to, and there was also really no appeal to leaving the house because you had to wear a mask, there were all these extra rules and regulations, it was a little bit scary, you weren't sure if things were going to be okay, you didn't know what your favorite grocery store was going to be like or your favorite restaurant, if that was going to feel like a joyous thing for you. So I got closeted and hermited up pretty hard. So out of necessity, this project came up and is still going. The reason I bring it up is because I just broke the 250 post mark, so I'm doing a single photo every day, and I've done that for the last 256 days now. Today is going to be 257. I'm going to have to take my photo today after this episode. And when it started off here, I didn't really have a feel for it. I'm going to try and not cry during this episode because this is what I do when I talk about this project. I didn't know what this was going to be. I knew I needed to get outside. I needed to get outside for my mental health, and I needed there to be evidence of that. I didn't want to do it in this like quiet vacuum. I didn't want it to be like a Facebook post or something. I wanted to be able to look back at all of this and have kind of a visual journal of all the times I stepped outside of my house. And I figured I didn't want that also to be on my kind of professional Instagram. So I figured I'll create a new account. It's proof I went outside. And all I'll do in the captions is just count up. Like, this is day 1, this is day 2, day 3, all the way to day 256, which is yesterday. And in the beginning of this project, I've scrolled all the way to the bottom of the feed here. I didn't really have a feel or aesthetic for this. The only rule was I had to get outside of my building. So I couldn't shoot from my balcony. I couldn't shoot from the common spaces or the garden downstairs, or I couldn't shoot through the windows and things like that. I actually had to get outside the boundaries of the building, and even if it's the front door, that's technically outside to me, and that's okay. I tried to do it at the furthest point away I got from my house that day, but what inevitably ends up happening is I focus on the chore or errand, and then I end up like a block away from home being, oh shit, I didn't take my photo today. So there's a lot of stuff from my alley and front door, even though I went further away from home that day. But back to the images here. So as we see progressing, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with this project. I didn't know what I wanted it to look like. So you'll just see there's not really a feel to it for the first couple weeks until I start to move towards a very kind of meticulous, boxy composition that carries through the rest of this project. You can start to see it coming up here with the bridges and sidewalk lines and everything like that, even some of the storefronts. I also tried to avoid people a lot. I was doing that because of the pandemic. A good person asked me if this was like a very purposeful thing. I just think I like a lot of control and organization, so having people in the shot was just another thing I couldn't control. Cars were kind of a necessary evil in a couple shots. I wish they weren't there, but here we are. People will sneak in every once in a while. But as I worked my way through the project here, and no, I'm not going for likes here. We're looking at the hovers here. It's like 7 and 14 and 16. And anybody on social media is like, Curtis, that's embarrassing. But the goal of this project isn't likes. I'm not adding a whole bunch of hashtags to this. It's just the day streak I'm on. And here, I'll even open one, show you guys what it looks like. So this is what it is, 35-day streak, and then the hashtag proof I went outside, and that's it. The reason I wanted to keep it simple is so that it would be accessible and I'd be able to be consistent with it. I didn't want to have to look up new hashtags each day. I knew some days were super shitty and I would wait until like 11:59 p.m. to go take the photo that day and then run out into my alleyway in flip-flops and pajama pants. So I just wanted to make sure I could do this every day without it becoming a big barrier. But as we start to progress, I start to get a feel of this project and what I want to say visually. So you can see there starts to be a little more consistency in terms of the framing and composition and everything like that. But none of this was predetermined when I started the project. It happened as a result of beginning and making the shitty version of this every day. Also, the whole thing was I was just taking photographs with my iPhone, so I wasn't bringing all my heavy equipment. I obviously have my own personal bias that anything a photographer posts should be like amazing, but this creative project really helped me dial that back a little bit and just, hey, a photograph is a photograph, and I was here, it mattered that I took it, I framed this up well, things look good. And I also got to see some cool parts of Vancouver and just kind of reference, like this was actually from a Christmas lights drive that I did. So it's nice to have a visual journal that didn't result in me having to get carpal tunnel syndrome. In a notebook, I can go through this and really quickly remember what happened on those days, most of them at least. And a really cool opportunity for me to kind of fix this problem I was having of getting outside. Okay. Oops. So, I think with creative projects, there is absolutely the people that draft something up and come up with a very specific mood board, thumbnails, they have some styling options and poses and images they want to emulate. For me, photographers don't often see when there's those drafts. Like when you have a traditional artist, like some of my friends are amazing painters and drawers, illustrators, yikes, sorry guys. And what they'll do, you'll see all the drafts they go through and they place the head and it's just a circle, the body's just a box. Photographers don't have that. They have one click and then everything's done. And you don't get to do a crappy version first, really, in most cases. So I think that's what creative projects can be in the beginning, like taking those crappy photos to figure out where you want to end up, rather than kind of dying the slow death of planning things on a page, which I am super guilty of. So don't worry, this is not you, this is me and maybe every creative out there. Make it, hate it, fix it is something I've started to ascribe to for a lot of my projects because I love to complain about stuff. I'm very, very picky. But if I don't have a tangible thing to complain about, it's very difficult to fix it. So first of all, making a crappy version of that thing, fixing what I don't like about that, and then repeating that cycle over and over again until it's where I want it to be. And so now if we scroll back up to present day here in Instagram land, as my computer catches up with all the loading this, it has a pretty consistent look. I can look at this now and feel like I know I took all these photos. And to outsiders, it also looks like I was the person clicking the iPhone button in a lot of these photographs. The other thing I keep in mind for a lot of these shots too is I only have one amazing photo per 20 days. There's just, sometimes the photos are taken out of necessity. I've probably shot this part of my alley over 24 times now because it's right by the garbage chute. It's the fastest way to get outside of my house while still being not rained on. So I use this for my like desperation 11:59 p.m. I need to take a photo place. But then as you go down, there's some nice stuff in composition here, and I'm really happy with kind of like the night shots here and the timing of this shot. I really like the saturation colors that came out of this one, and also it's all the way up in Kamloops, so it's a little exotic for going outside my house for that day. So I'm not expecting each day to be the most amazing photograph I've ever taken, but I am expecting to take a photograph that day. So if you've made it this far in the video, please do like and subscribe. It's the way I am able to keep doing these things and keeping it fun for me on my end, even though I do love to teach. I hope that was a helpful topic. If you have any ideas or topics that you'd like me to cover in the future, please do let me know in the comments and or chat. And last time I had a video, somebody mentioned that they popped into the chat, but it didn't come through. So I'm just going to make sure to turn on the chat here so that I haven't missed any comments, because that's not a mistake I want to make again. And it looks like it's all clear over here. So thank you for listening, and hopefully this helps with your next creative project. I'd love to see it. So if you have one online or you're going to post one later, please send me a link. I'll check it out. Happy to give feedback. Have a good day.